Mr. Buffett and Mr. Munger, been a great deal of respect for your integrity and your wisdom. I work as an inner city school teacher where there is a rising and pervasive sense of hopelessness. When I ask my students what would make you happy, their predominant response is $1 million. As some of the richest men in the world, I wonder what your response to them might be. And as a second part of this question, the philosophical underpinnings of capitalism have largely ignored a systemic perspective involving issues of ongoing depletion of limited global resources exploited to sustain a market economy, widening gaps between the very wealthy and the severely impoverished, and an international view of America as a country whose primary values are greed and imperialism. As we move into the 21st century, do you see a need to re-envision capitalist premises towards original notions of democracy, justice, and humanitarian concerns?
You can get all of that.
Well, I will say this. I'm higher on the existing social order than you are. There's always plenty wrong with a social order, and certainly there are places where ours is a lot more broken than it used to be. I don't think Warren and I have any wonderful solution to all the problems of the world, but wishing for $1 million instead of some more tangible short step is the wrong frame of mind. That isn't the way we got our $1 million.
Yeah. Well, I don't.
Warren might give a different answer, by the way. He's
No, I would agree with the wishing for a job. Makes a lot of sense to me, and figuring out how to get one, and then going from there. But there is, and always has been. That doesn't mean it always should be, but there is a tremendous amount of inequality. What you don't want is an inequality of opportunity. There will be a lot of inequality in ability. A market system like we have turns out what people want. If they want to watch a heavyweight fight and they want to watch Mike Tyson, they're going to pay him $25 million for getting in the ring for a few minutes. And it produces what people like, and it produces in an abundance, and it's done very well in terms of production. It is much better to be in the bottom 20% in this country now than it was 50 years ago, and it's better to be in the bottom 20% of this country than in any other country. But it still isn't very satisfactory. The market system does not reward teachers, it does not reward it does not reward all kinds of people who do all kinds of useful things in any way comparable to how it will reward entertainers or people who can figure out the value of businesses or athletes or that sort of thing. A market system pays very big for something that will entertain them. People want to be entertained a good bit of the day, and pays better for people that will entertain than educate. I don't want to tinker with the market system. I don't think I should be telling people what they should want to do with their lives, but I do think that it's incumbent on the people that do very well under that system to be taxed in a manner that takes reasonable care of anybody that is not well adapted to that system, but that it's a perfectly decent citizen in every other regard. And that is, I don't want to start getting into comparable worth in terms of how I tax, but I do think that somebody like me that happens to just fit this system magnificently, but wouldn't be worth a damn in Bangladesh or someplace, because what I have wouldn't pay off there. Their system would not reward that. I think that we get from society. This society provides me with enormous rewards for what I bring to the game. And it does the same with Mike Tyson, and it does the same with some guy whose adenoids are right for singing or whatever it may be. And I don't want to tamper with that, but I do think those people who are getting all kinds of claim checks on the rest of society from that, where people who are not well adapted to that, system, but that are perfect really fall through the slats on that. And I think progress has been made on that over the last 50 years, but I think we're far from a perfect society in that respect. And I hope more progress is made in the next 50 years. I don't think the wishing for the $1 million, though, is that it doesn't work that way. I think, but if you are lucky enough to have something that the market system rewards, you do very well here. And if you're unlucky enough to have something it doesn't reward, you do better now than you would have 30 or 40 years ago, and you do better than in other countries. But I can see where it seems very unjust to look at somebody else who has just a little different mix of talents that can achieve claim checks in a way that keeps them and the next 5 generations of their family in a position where they don't have to do very much.
I would say that I like a certain amount of social intervention that takes some of the inequality out of results in capitalism, but I hate with a passion rewarding anything that can be easily faked, because I think then people lie, and lying works, and the lying spreads, and I think your whole civilization deteriorates. If I were running the world, the compensation for stress under workman's compensation would be 0. Not because there isn't real stress, because there's no way to keep the fakery out if you reward stress at all.
Charlie, what are you reading these days?
Well, I'm almost ashamed to report, because I've gone back and picked up the part of biology that I should have picked up 10 or 15 years earlier. And if any of you haven't done it, it's a total circus what they figured out over the last 20 or 30 years in biology. And if you take Dawkins, The Selfish Gene, and The Blind Watchmaker, I mean, these are marvelous books, and there are words in those books that are entering the English language, that are going to be in the next Oxford dictionary. I mean, these are powerful books, and they're a lot of fun. I had to read The Selfish Gene twice before I fully understood it, and there were things I believed all my life that weren't so. And I think it's just wonderful when you have those experiences. We always say it isn't the learning that's so hard, it's the unlearning.
Yeah. I made the mistake of taking Charlie up to Microsoft in December, and he became friends with Nathan Myhrvold, and they are corresponding back and forth with increasing fervor and enthusiasm about mole rats, and they copy me on all these communications, so I'm getting to see this flow back and forth on the habits of mole rats. And I really haven't found a way to apply it at Berkshire, but I'm sure Charlie has got something he's working on that. He's gotten very interested in biology lately. I've always liked reading biography, but since the computer's changed my life, I now find myself playing bridge on the computer about 10 hours a week, and unfortunately, I didn't want to give up sleep or eating or Berkshire, so the reading has been kind of light. On investment books, if you're asking about that, I would recommend the first 2 books that Phil Fisher wrote back around 1960, Common Sense and Uncommon Profits, and the second one. They're very good books. I obviously recommend first and foremost The Intelligent Investor, with chapters 8 and 20 are the ones that you really should read. All of the important ideas in investing really are in that book, because there's only about 3 ideas, and those two of them are emphasized in those 2 chapters. Actually, I think John Train's Money Masters is an interesting book. I don't know, can you think of any others, Charlie, that we want to tout?
I don't know. We have such a fingers and toes style around Berkshire Hathaway. We just sort of count. I've never seen, Warren talks about these discounted cash flows. I've never seen him do one.
Yeah.
If it isn't,
there are some things you only do in private, Charlie.
If it isn't pluperfect obvious that it's going to work out well if you do the calculation, he tends to go on to the next idea.
Yeah, it's sort of it is true. You don't if you have to actually do it with pencil and paper, it's too close to think about. I mean, it ought to just kind of scream at you that you've got this huge margin of safety. I mentioned the three ideas. The three ideas I should elaborate on. One is that to think of yourself, to think of investing as owning a business and not buying something that wiggles around in price. And the second one is your attitude, which ties in with that, the attitude toward the market. That's covered in Chapter 8. And if you have the proper attitude toward market movements, it's an enormous help in securities. And the final chapter is on the margin of safety, which means don't try and drive a 9,800-pound truck over a bridge that says, capacity 10,000 pounds, but go down the road a little bit and find one that says capacity 15,000 pounds.
I'm Joe Condon from London. Both Mr. Buffett and Mr. Munger have addressed my question in annual reports and at previous meetings here. This is my first time. It has to do with investment in a few great high technology stocks. I know your answer has been that if you don't understand it, and I can't, after this performance, can't really believe that both of you don't understand most of the high technology questions. But I'm thinking about not only Microsoft, but say Pfizer and J&J, all three companies which have already proven that not only do they have a great product, proven management over 10 to 15 years, great market share positions, which are not easy to get into. And I frankly don't see a big difference in the PE ratios, for example, if you say Coca-Cola, or against Johnson & Johnson or Pfizer, which are very powerful companies. I wonder if either or both of you would address that question again.
Charlie, why don't you?
If you have something you think you understand that looks very attractive to you, we think it's smart to do what you understand. If we'd been unable to find companies, we well might have been in the to it. We don't sneer at it. Other people with more talent have found that a wonderful course of action.
We generally look at businesses. We feel change is likely to work against us. We do not have great ability. We do not think we have great ability to predict where change is going to lead. We think we have some ability to find businesses where we don't think change is going to be very important. Now, at a Gillette, the product is going to be better 10 years from now than now, or 20 years from now than 10 years from now. You saw those earlier ads going back to the Blue Blade and all that. The Blue Blade seemed great at the time, but the shaving technology gets better and better. But you know that Gillette, although they had that little experience with Wilkinson in the early 60s, but you know that Gillette is basically going to be spending many multiples the money on developing better shaving systems than exist now compared to anyone else. You know, they got the distribution system, they got the believability. If they bring out a product and they say this, they got the distribution system, they got the believability. If they bring out a product and they say this is something that, when they said to women to look at it, in the shaving field, they wouldn't have that same credibility someplace else, but in the shaving field they have it. Those are assets that can't be built, and they're very hard to destroy. So change, we think we know in a general way what the soft drink industry or the shaving industry or the candy business is going to look like 10 or 20 years from now. We think Microsoft is a sensational company run by the best of managers, but we don't have any idea what that world is going to look like in 10 or 20 years. Now, if you're going to bet on somebody that is going to see out and do what we can't do ourselves, I'd rather bet on Bill Gates than anybody else. But I don't want to bet on anybody else. I mean, in the end, we want to understand ourselves where we think a business is going. And if somebody tells us the business is going to change a lot, in Wall Street they love to tell you that that's great opportunity. They don't think it's a great opportunity when Wall Street itself is going to change a lot, incidentally. But it's a great opportunity. We don't think it's an opportunity at all. I mean, it scares the hell out of us because we don't know how things are going to change. We are looking, when people are chewing gum, we have a pretty good idea how they chewed it 20 years ago and how they'll chew it 20 years from now. And we don't really see a lot of technology going into the art of the chew, But, so as long as we don't have to make those other decisions, why in the world should we? I mean, if I had all kinds of things we don't know, and so why go around trying to bet on things we don't know when we can bet on the simple things?